Hey, YouTube family, and welcome to another video of the Kevin Strong Show. And in this video, we're going to talk about how the Social Security system is basically broke and how they're basically talking about making some massive changes that could affect you if you're expecting to get a Social Security check in the near future or maybe far away. If you're paying into the system, you may not get any of your money back. That's in my opinion. But let's talk about the origin of Social Security and how it all evolved. So back in 1935, I believe August 14th of 1935, the Social Security Act went into law. I think the impetus behind that law came about because that was during the Great Depression. And the government wanted to make sure as people reached the age of 65 or older that they'd have some type of income to rely on in their retirement years. I think what has happened, what has evolved over the last 90 years almost, is the fact that people have solely relied on Social Security as a means to supplement or basically provide a lifestyle for them after they leave the workforce. So because so many people are drawing on the system, it is expanded into disability, child care, various programs, rightly or wrongly. But all of those programs have massively drawn down on the system to the point where it's insolvent. They're saying basically that by 2034, that Social Security will be basically depleted. We all know that it's basically insolvent now, and they're just basically running it on borrowed debt. So once again, I want to jump into this article. This is some really good information. If you haven't had an opportunity to check out my video about the pension crisis in the United States, this is tantamount to that because it always starts off with something small. They call it a benefit cut or a minor concession, but you all know very well, anytime there's any type of cuts to something that you're entitled to, very seldom do you ever get that back. So these small cuts are almost kind of like that analogy of people talking about the frog that's in water. And as long as you turn the temperature up at a slow, moderate pace, the frog doesn't realize that the water is getting hot and it boils to death. But if you put the frog in the water when it's boiling, then it jumps right out. So I think they are systematically coming up with programs about pushing the retirement age further and talking about small cuts, because if they really told everybody in what a dire strait the Social Security system was in, I think people would go into a panic. But without further ado, let's get into the news. Once again, the title of this article is Social Security retirement age is moving to 67. Some experts say that it could go even higher. So here's the three or some key points with this article. While many people hope to retire at age 62, Social Security doesn't pay full benefits until as late as the age of 67. So if you've been paying into Social Security, you can go on the Social Security government website, punch in your information, and then based on your projected contribution, you can find out what your monthly Social Security check would be if you took the early payment plan at 62. If you wait to 67, you'll see when you go to the webpage, there is a significant bump in monthly contribution that you get from the government for delaying delaying the payment for the Social Security from going from 62 to 67. If you wait those additional 5 years, your payment goes up quite a bit. And I'm sure that's because all the actuaries and people who are a lot smarter than me come up with life expectancy tables, and they basically are going to reward you for delaying taking your money out. I got like some radio static in my microphone. So hopefully you guys are not hearing that. I don't know what it is. It's not me. I'm not talking to myself. The normal retirement age could get pushed even higher based on how lawmakers choose to address the program's solvency issues. See how vague that is? Could higher to what? I'm telling you, this thing is in such peril conditions. Nothing is off the table. Here's what those changes could mean for people in retirement or planning on it. So let's get into the article and get into some of this information. I've already talked about the average age when people say they hope to retire is around 62. That's based on a survey. But once again, like I said, if you wait to 67, you'll get a significant bump in the amount of money that you get from Social Security. However, people receive reduced benefits for claiming early, and that's what I talked about. If you jump in at 62, if they wait until full retirement age to claim, generally 66 or 67, depending upon when you were born, and you can get that from the Social Security Administration website, they receive full benefits which they have earned. If they wait until the age of 70, they stand to gain an 8%. They stand to gain an 8% per year benefit increase over their full retirement age. So once again, these are all actuary and statistical people who basically say, if you're going to wait to 70, we know we're going to get you. You're not going to get us. I'll just put it to you that way. So here we go. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives last week, approved a retirement bill that would push out the age for required minimum distribution on certain savings accounts to 75, up from the current age of 72. That change, if it passes the Senate, would be gradually phased in by 2032. Okay, and this is just talking about some life-changing events here. Okay, so let's go down here to when we start talking about the insolvency part of this article. Here we go. The trust funds that the Social Security Administration relies on to pay benefits are projected to be depleted in 2034. So let me repeat that. Projected to be depleted in 2034. So it could be a lot sooner or it could be a lot later. And the operative word in that phrase or in that sentence is depleted. It didn't say, well, it's going to be scaled back by 10%. They're saying it's going to be gone. And if they're predicting that this massive program is going to be depleted in the next 12 years, you can imagine the type of concessions that they're going to have to impose on current retirees and future retirees in order to keep the program running. And that's the point that I want to heighten and get you guys to start thinking out of the box about ways to supplement your income as you move closer to retirement. At that time, 78% of promised benefits will be payable, the government agency said last year. So let's just round that off. 20%, or specifically 22%, what happens with that? This article doesn't address that. I don't even think the 78% is going to be an accurate number. To shore up the program, lawmakers have a choice of increasing taxes, imagine that, on benefits, raising payroll taxes, or increasing the retirement age. Any enacted changes could include a combination of all three. So once again, they're actually kind of telling on themselves in terms of telling you how insolvent the system is, because they're basically saying all options are going to be on the table. All hands are on deck in terms of the government's going to do whatever it needs to do to include painful cuts and concessions in order to try to keep this massive underfunded program solvent. Of note, Social Security advocates are staunchly against tweaking the Social Security retirement ages. It's going to go through, folks. Trust me. And once again, that's why I was talking about in my pension crisis video about how important it is to not just listen to these folks telling you that your pension is solvent. That is a year-to-year assessment. That's not something they can guarantee, because once again, a lot of these programs, specifically pensions, are predicated on a certain annual return that they have to get from the stock market. I digress. But getting back to Social Security, the retirement age was last changed in 1983. Ronald Reagan did it. He basically pushed it up from 67 to 65. Even just the bump up to age 66 from 65 represented a 5% benefit cut. Keep in mind, understand this. Every time these folks are talking about cuts, that's not factoring in inflation. If your benefits get cut by 10% and inflation happens to be 15 or 10% the same year, you don't have to be a mathematician to understand in that particular year, you almost lost a quarter of your yearly Social Security benefits in the form of a lack of purchasing power. So this is a really, really serious topic. I think a lot of people don't educate themselves about how the government has all this set up, and with all of this debt that we have, that we all have to pay it back. And the way we're going to pay it back is through higher property taxes, higher income taxes. Concessions will have to be made on things like Social Security and pensions, guaranteed pensions. So a lot of guys who are Abbott Union guys out there, I try to educate those guys as much as possible. The analogy I tell them is you quit listening to the language about guarantee. I'll tell you guys a quick story about what happened to the city of Detroit, and then I'll go ahead and end the video. So the city of Detroit, some of you may not be aware, went bankrupt a while back, and they had an obligation to some of their city employees that they had guaranteed pensions. It was actually under state law in the state of Michigan that they had to pay these pensions out. So what did the city of Detroit do? They filed bankruptcy in federal court. Okay. They didn't file it in the state, they filed it in the federal court system, which was outside the jurisdiction of the state. So the state mandates that were in place to say that, hey, you must pay these guaranteed pensions to these retirees was not applicable because the bankruptcy petition was filed in federal court. To make a long story short, they prevailed, it was granted, and some of those folks took a 30 to 40% reduction in their pensions, even though it was on the books, it was on the state legislative books that these were guarantees. There's always a different way to skin a cat. Continue to think out of the box. Please continue to figure out ways how to create passive income, and do not have a complacent mindset. You have to keep grinding, because if you stop, you just get eaten up by inflation. I hope you're enjoying this type of content. If you are, please do me a wonderful favor. Like, comment, and share, because you know I care. This was the Kevin Strong Show. And in this video, we talked about the crisis as it applies to Social Security. And I'll see you in the next video.